Hello, welcome to The Exhausted Programmer. My name is Alexander, and today we're taking a deeper look into Git. This is a follow-up video to a previous video where we looked at Git in the context of one person on one machine. For one person, you do not need a server. You can track the changes you make and have a log created that will show you what has happened to whatever files you're working on. Most people, though, think of Git as a way of collaborating between multiple users. In this video, we'll have two users interacting with the same repository. I do want to emphasize again that Git doesn't have to be used with code. Our video today will be making and editing a list, and so you can see how Git can be useful for things beyond just programming. In this video, we will create branches and deal with conflicts in the merging process. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, just continue to watch as we set up the server. To explain what we're seeing right now is that I am on a Raspberry Pi 0W. In fact, it's a little thing behind me right now. It's running a Git server that I set up. How to set up your own Git server is outside the scope. And honestly, I don't see any benefit to it other than for me to make this video. Sometimes my internet disconnects, and I don't want that to be the reason why I can't make a video today and therefore get a video out on time. So I'm running my own private Git server. Anytime I want to actually share code, I use GitHub, and I would recommend that despite not getting paid by them to recommend them. And it is what this channel uses anytime I do want to share code. In fact, at the end of this video, if you want to get a list of all the commands that were ran outside the Git server itself, you can look in the description. There should be a GitHub link, and it will just be a list of all the commands, maybe broken down based on who's running it. I don't know at this moment. But let's go ahead and set this up on the server. If you are using GitHub, there's a whole GUI on the website to run. I would suggest setting up your initial GitHub server repository that way, but I'm doing it local. So here we have our two programmers, the exhausted programmer and the energetic programmer. They are different users on the same machine in this case, but they have separate home directories, and a lot of the Git config stuff is tied into your home directory. To address one of the things that was different in the last video is that I was running on an older version of Ubuntu, and it didn't have a up-to-date version of Git. This is a fresher install of Linux Mint, and it does have a more recent version of Git. So when we run our Git init, it's going to be a little bit different. So let's go ahead and create a temp directory and then cd into it. This is temporary because I will be deleting it in just a second. But when we run git init, we get this huge hint message. And what I like about Git is how simple it is to fix this. It tells you right here. You can just give it a name like this, and then now your main branch is named main. Main works for me. It works for my way I think about code for the most part, but I have seen other code repositories where trunk makes more sense. Development could even make sense as your main directory. It's all about how the layout is done. That's for project managers and IT managers to decide for you. But if you're doing it yourself, I would just git branch main. But of course, if you don't have to see hint messages, which really feel like error messages, it would be better not to. So let's start again. Let's create a new project with a new name so there's no confusion. Go into the directory, and then we can initialize it like this. And no more hint message, but it does the same thing. Initialize empty git repository in home. Of course, different directory because we're in a different directory. So now that we have it set up, let's go ahead and create something to track. We're going to create a simple list. We can use this little double dot notation, and what it means in Bash is that from the ranges of 0 to 10, and if you give it another number, you can tell it what the interval should be. If you just did 0.10, it would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I put something outside the bracket so that it's added to each iteration of this list. This is a list of numbers, but I want it to be each on their own line, and that's what the A is really for, so I can string replace the A with a new line. I'm going to do that with sed. I'm going to find the A and a space, so A and a space, and replace it with a new line, and drop that into a file called list. We can then look at that list and see that there's a problem. There's still an A at the end of 10. I could go in and fix it right now, but I kind of want to pretend like we're not being good developers following through with what we're supposed to do. Let's pretend we didn't cat out the list. Let's just assume we knew what we were doing, or we thought we knew what we were doing, and we make a bad commit. Let's go ahead and make that bad commit. First, we have to add any changed files or new files to our commit. And with git add, you can specify specific files you want. We'll look at 2 other ways of doing git adds later. Git commit with a message. And we did make a list, but not the list that we thought we were making. And then we can go ahead and push this to the server, except we haven't told this Git repository of a server. There is no server that this Git repository is aware exists. And it tells us exactly how to do it. We can use git remote add, and then a name, which is origin, and our local server and the name of the project that we initialized on that server. When I do this, that's great. So now we can push, right? Not quite. If we try, we see that, oh no, even though we've added this server to our known information, we haven't set it as the upstream server. So let's go ahead and do this git push set upstream origin main, just as it says to do it. Now can we git push? Of course we can. And there we go. Everything is up to date. It seems like this git push actually made everything up to date. Doing a git push just to make sure it's not the worst thing in the world. Same with a git pull, just to make sure you're on the most recent thing, but we'll do that later. So that's one user. Let's go to the energetic programmer. The first thing is to show that we're not the same person. You see there's no project directory in my home directory, and so we need to get that project directory. And since the server exists, we can go ahead and use git clone, the same IP address or however you want to say it, same project name, and we pull it in. We can cd into the directory, and we can show our files in the directory, except there's nothing there. That's okay. It's because we're not on the right checkout. It says unable to check out, so we can just check out the main branch. And there we go, switch to main branch. And now we can see that we have the list. Is it the same list though? Oh, of course it is. There it is, 0 through 10. The A is included, and obviously the energetic programmer just wants to get that fixed right away. So let's go ahead and fix it. We're going to string replace the 10A with a 10, and we're going to string replace the 4 with a 4, new line 5. And so this should give us 0, 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10 with no A. And sure enough, it does. Now we want to add it to our commit because we want to make this change to main. And here we can use a different version of add where we just add the dot. This adds all files. If you're working on large repositories, this is a great way of introducing bugs that you weren't planning on introducing to a branch. And if you're doing it like we're doing it right now, which is editing the main branch, you're really setting yourself up for failure here. I've obviously gone through all this with a fine-tooth comb, so it's okay, but let's continue on. We do the same git commit. I'm doing the -m flag. If you don't give it the flag, it will open up your default editor. There's ways of changing that, but again, not right now. And then we need to push this to the server. We have the changes pushed to the server. Also, to take a second to just say that, make sure your commit messages make sense. We did add the number 5 and we did clean up the list. You don't have to specify everything you did. You want your messages short. There are line limits standards that are put in place depending on which version of content control you're using. Just make sure you're doing whatever you're supposed to be doing. I default to sticking to 80 line length things, but I have seen where git commit messages are even shorter due to the way that they're presented on the screen. Ask your manager if that is a question you have for your team. Back on the exhausted programmer's machine, do we see the changes that were made? Well, no. That's because we haven't pulled them from the server. Remember, everything's going through a server now. So we git pull. Takes a second, and there we see, 2 pluses, 1 minus. That kind of makes sense if you think of adding 2 lines, 5 and 10, and deleting 1 line. How git determines what's added and what's deleted and what's changed really isn't important, but if you saw a ton of symbols like we will in a little bit, you might know something else is up than what you were expecting, which isn't the end of the world because there's ways of reverting stuff, but just something to look at while you're doing this stuff. And look, our list is fixed, has the 5, doesn't have that extra A. Great. Now, all this that we've done so far, I've mentioned problems, but another problem we have is that we're just editing the main branch, and that's not good development. Even if you're not doing code, you might want to do your changes, test them out, and then bring them back in instead of just changing the main. So let's go ahead and create a new branch. Git checkout, you can check out a branch. We did that before with main, but if you give it the -b flag, it will create the new branch for you while it's checking it out. You can also see all the branches you have available on the local machine with git branch --list. And here we see that there's main and our new one, and that we are attached to the new branch. The thing is the server doesn't know that we've made this new branch, so let's go ahead and tell the server. Oh, and here's that same error message before. Didn't we tell it that we want to set the upstream? Well, we did for main, not for more numbers. And I don't want to see this error message anymore. So let's check out this last bit of information it gives us, this push auto setup remote. If we go into our Git help configs and we search for auto setup remote, we see this little body of text, which isn't much to read, but this is what got me, and the reason why I want to share it is workflows most likely to benefit from this option are simple central workflows. So we're still not even in complicated areas of what you can do with Git. And to be honest, I don't ever plan on getting into this level of detail with Git, because as it says, we are expecting the server to have the same names for branches that our local machine has. And that just makes sense to me. The idea is that every checkout, whether it's on the server or on a machine, at least the branch names should match. That's how I think Git should be used. But if you want to do it differently, you can. I would just argue you're probably doing it wrong. But whatever, I don't know every detail of every software department out there. But for me, I cannot imagine a situation where I won't want this auto setup remote to be true. And you can set it pretty simple. Just run git config global push auto setup remote true. In the last video, I mentioned this global flag and how we would discuss it here. It's pretty simple. You can have config set at the global level, which is your home directory, which doesn't feel super global to me. There's the system flag, which then sets it for the whole machine in a /etc directory. So everyone has access to that. Doesn't seem to be the most secure, best way of handling workflow, but you know, let your infra team decide. And then there's local, where you can actually have config set only for the repository you're in at this moment. For our purposes, local and global would be the same thing, but if you're going to do a lot of different repositories and you want them all to have the same config files, use the global. If you want a certain local one to be different, you can do that with the local flag instead. The documentation online and in the terminal when you run the git help command is all very helpful to explain more of the details. But anyway, we now have our auto setup remote true, so now we can git push, and it works as expected. And from now on, if I create a new branch, if I go to push, it will try to do this for me automatically. Now we're in a new branch, but we haven't made any changes. So let's go ahead and do that. We're gonna add some more numbers. We're gonna replace the 0 with 0 new line 1, 2 with 2 new line 3, so that we should get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 already exist, 8, and then 10. But just like last time, there's gonna be a little problem, another bug. And it's that there's a 0 here that it put a 1 on the next line, and then there's a 0 here and it put a 1 on the next line. But again, we're pretending we're not noticing the problems that we're introducing. Just wanted to show you. And we're going to go ahead and commit this even more dangerously than this git add before. Because instead of running git add and specifying the specific files, or git add and just making it clear that you do want to add files, some people will just run git commit with the a flag, the lowercase a flag, and it automatically adds all the files that it could add with the git add dot. Even less chance of checking yourself before you mess up your repository. But if it works for you, it works for you. And then let's push it to the server. And all the changes are on the server, and we're good to go to the other programmer. So the energetic programmer is here, ready to get more information from the server. But first, just show there is no more numbers branch. And just like before, it's because we haven't pulled that information from the server. When we run git pull, we'll see that we actually pull in, hey, look, a new branch, more numbers, origin, more numbers. All right, so now we can see that, right? If we run git branch, it's still not there. And the reason why is because it's not a locally tracked branch. And local here just means in this git version. So this on this machine, in this directory, there's a .git file, and that is not tracking this locally. We can find the branch though. If we run the git branch -a, it shows us both the main one that is on this machine and the more numbers, which is on the remote. Now, if we want to check out the more numbers one, do we need to type in all this remote's origin stuff? No, we can just check out more numbers, and hey, not only does it know which one we want, but it will now track it on this machine. We can git pull just to make sure we have everything up to date. Of course, we got all that information when we did the git pull up ahead. As you see, you know, it pulled in bytes changes and stuff like that. Sorry, right about here. But, you know, an extra git pull to make sure you're up to date is always a good thing to do when you're first starting working on a project, like for the day or for like after lunch. Just come in, git pull, make sure no one's made any changes that you need. And then we can look at the list and again see that error. But we're not here to fix the error. That is someone else's branch. Instead, we want to make our own branch. But first, let me show you that main hasn't changed. And this is great. This is one of the biggest benefits to version control, is that we had a programmer, a developer, introduce a bug. But if the live server is running the main branch, that bug hasn't been introduced until someone merges it in. Now, the same person who made the bug could merge it in if you don't have the permissions set up, but it's very trivial to set up permissions such that only certain people can merge stuff into the main branch. You can go further and make it where you have to do a code review if you want to have something merged in. There's all sorts of things you can do in what's called the CI/CD pipeline, but it's out of this scope here. But there are ways of preventing the bugs from being introduced through a system of force auditing, requiring certain people to sign off and all that kind of stuff. That's usually handled at the server level. I'm running my own private server. I have not set up any of that stuff, but you can do it on GitHub and you can do it on GitLab. I've used GitLab in the past in that way, and it's a great feature. But let's continue on. Let's create our own branch. So where the other one was adding more numbers, this is adding bigger numbers. So I'm going to call it bigger numbers. And let's just go ahead and add that. And just to point out, the 2 arrows appends to the list to the list file, the list.txt file. We'll have the same 12, 100 counting by evens with the A, and then we're going to replace the A with new lines. And if we cat that out, we see we have a much longer list here, one that we'd have to scroll. The thing is there is a bug here. There's these spaces before the line, and we can use sed really easy to fix this by using the in-place flag, tell it the file that we want to edit, and the function is string replace a space with what's between these, which is nothing. And so now we'll see that all those spaces are gone. So let's go ahead and make those changes a part of the system using that same A flag, just so that there's no checking. If there's bugs, who cares? And before we push this user hasn't set up that auto setup remote flag. So we'll go ahead and set that up here. And now we can push to the server. And now all the changes on this machine are on the server. So the exhausted programmer in this case can go back to main, can try to merge in his own branch. He has not pulled in any information about bigger numbers, but that's not important because all we're doing is merging the changes there. And now we're ready to make a commit. We can take a look at get status. If you're ever kind of curious at where you're at, get status is a good place to try. We're on the main branch and we're ahead of what the main branch on the server is by 1 commit. We need to git push to publish our local commits. So let's go ahead and do that. And there we go. And now if we show our list looks like what it did in the more numbers branch with the bug. But that's okay, because this programmer, the energetic programmer, is going to come in and do something similar. Go to main branch, merge in our changes. So, first pull in the changes that were made over here by the exhausted programmer. I did want to point out that with the merging, you merge this branch into the branch you're in at this moment. So since we were on main, we merged more numbers into main. We can merge branches that aren't main if we wanted to, but we don't really want to. We can show that the list does have the bugs. Let's pretend we didn't check that, and we're just going to assume everything's going to work out right and merge in our changes as well. There's a problem. There's a conflict. We can look at the conflict in a few different ways. A very common one is get diff. And it shows us these little flags here and all the changes. And what it's saying is that this is one version of the change, and then down here is the other change, and this is the 2 conflicts. Now when you see this, you might think, oh, well, I know I want mine, whatever, but it's important because I've gotten burnt on this with not with Git, but something else, where I didn't fully understand that these arrows and these labels are actually in the file itself. That is to say, if we cat the list, this is part of the list now, and we don't want that. If you don't know what to do when you get into a merge problem and you just want to back away and let someone else handle it, you can just abort the merge with the abort flag, and now our list is back to the way it was before we tried to merge it. But let's see if we can't fix this problem ourselves. So let's go ahead and merge the bigger numbers, and we get the conflict. We can show our list. But here's something that we can do, kind of out of the scope of this video, but we can actually have cat show us the numbers of each line. So if we do cat-n list, these are the line numbers. And we can use this to figure out which lines we do not want. We don't want 10, 11, or 12, and we don't want 59. And we can actually remove those with sed. So if we do this, we see that there's nothing at the bottom, and that, everything looks well. Scroll this way. Everything looks like how we want it, but just like before with sed, you need to give it the -i flag to do in-place edits. Again, we're going to edit 10 through 12. The comma is like a through, so 10, 11, and 12. And then we're also going to delete those lines, and then we're going to do another command, which is delete line 59. And when we do that, it will update our list. We can take a look at our Git status. Again, check what branch we're on before we do a merge, which we're already doing a merge, seeing that these haven't been added yet, so we might want to add those. Let's do it the appropriate way, which is to specify the file so we don't grab anything we don't want. Let's do the git commit message, and then let's push it to the server. And then finally, let's go back to the exhausted programmer's machine. Let's pull in all the information, and let's see where we're at with our list. Nothing weird on the bottom, nothing weird in the middle here, no extra 1. All the 0 through 6 is still here. It's exactly how we expect it to be, thanks to Git. Hopefully this video has shown that Git has a lot of potential to help you with managing your code or any other files that you have. There's obviously more we can do with Git, and I might even make a part 3, but I don't know when I will do that, to show how we can choose which merges to take in, which commits to use in our main branch, as well as maybe dealing with other forms of conflicts. If you have any questions though about Git, feel free to drop them in the comment below, because I haven't even began writing the script for the part 3 of this, and again, don't know when it's coming out. So anytime that you might have an idea, just drop it down there and I'll see about adding it to the next video. If you have any questions about any of the topics covered in this channel, you can drop a comment here or anywhere else. If you like what you saw, like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.